I'm Randy Cassingham, founder of ThisIsTrue.com, the oldest entertainment newsletter on the internet. How old? It's in its 32nd year. Every week without fail. Not bad. Anyway, if you've watched last week's, you might be raising your eyebrow a little bit. Aren't you wearing the same shirt? Well, yeah, I'm actually recording this on the same day because after I finished up recording last week's video, I realized I had recorded more than 20 minutes of footage. And this is supposed to be more like 10 minutes max. So maybe I'll slop over a little bit, I don't know. But I decided to go ahead and cut out a couple of those answers and move them over to this week so that I don't instantly go more than double of what I said these videos are going to be. Ollie in Virginia, who is your favorite person you've ever discovered or researched for the Honorary Unsubscribe? That one's fairly easy. I've actually thought about that one quite a bit over the years, because there was one guy that really caught my imagination because he was so creative. That's Reynold B. Johnson, Reynold. I remember his spelling. I remember his middle initial. He worked for IBM, and he was brought into IBM because he had invented the Scantron, which is what it's kind of a generic name for it, I think. Fill in the bubble with a number 2 pencil. We've all done that. Somebody invented that, and that was Ray Johnson. And that wasn't the only thing that he invented. He came up with that and was basically offering to give it to IBM. And IBM said, no, why don't you come work for us? And we'll buy it from you, and you can develop other things, because they saw his potential. Well, he sure did develop other things. He, for instance, invented the hard drive. He also invented the video cassette, not videotape, but in the old days, videotape came on reels, and you had to wind it through the machine in a very meticulous way, which I know because I had to do that. I was an AV tech in high school, and we used tape decks for instructional materials, and they were very finicky. You had to clean the heads, just about every time you used it, and you had to wind that tape on in a very certain way. And he thought, there should be a better way of doing this. So he came up with a cassette where you just pop the cassette in, it loads it up, it does all of the winding around the heads and everything for you. He invented that. And other things too. I was so fascinated by it. And when I looked back after some years at that Honorary Unsubscribe, I remembered that in those days, the Honorary Unsubscribe was one paragraph. It was a very quick summary. And since then, I've expanded it quite a bit, where I really want to tell the story of the person and why they had an impact. So now there are multiple paragraphs. There's still about a 3-minute read usually, but I really am more telling the story. And I thought, I really shortchanged my favorite guy. I really need to revisit this. And I've never redone old Honorary Unsubscribes, but what I did was researched him much more deeply and then did a podcast episode about him. I'll link to it in the show notes, in the comments, on YouTube, whatever. I will link to that podcast. The podcasts not only are audio, but there's also video that this is video. Not only are they audio, but there's also a transcript, and it's a easy to read format, so that it reads like a story. It reads like an Honorary Unsubscribe. So that's definitely by far the Honorary Unsubscribe that I found most interesting. Jeffrey in Nevada will wrap us up. Do you think AI will be able to replicate your newsletter within a few years? I'm happy to say, not a chance. I do use AI for some of my research, but I find that I can't trust it to get things right. We've all heard that AI has hallucinations, that they make things up. And so even if that was 100% fixed, and it's not, I still find the need to check them out. I have actually had, I've used AI for research for Honorary Unsubscribes. I'll say, have you found any, or can you find anybody of interest who's died in the last 10 days that I could use for an Honorary Unsubscribe? And it comes up with a list of people, and very rarely do I find them of interest myself. They're either really obscure, and part of the idea for the Honorary Unsubscribe is to be obscure, but if they're too obscure, they haven't had any effect on the world at large. And I want somebody that, the bottom line for me is the slogan of the site. These are the people you will wish you had met. And very often what ChatGPT comes up with is like, no, I'm not interested in meeting that person. I don't lament that I didn't meet that person. Occasionally it will find somebody that I'll look into more deeply, but more often I find them myself anyway. And I have experimented with feeding in their name and saying, tell me about this person, and write me a summary in the style of the Honorary Unsubscribe. It's read my Honorary Unsubscribes. It knows the approximate format. It doesn't follow the format. It doesn't tell a story. It recites a bunch of facts. And I can't even rewrite it to make it a story. So, but it's not useless because it will give me its sources. It'll link out to where it picked up these facts. And then I will go to those sources, and then I can find things that I say, there's the story. This is the narrative line that I want to pursue. And ChatGPT will not do that. But you actually asked for more about This Is True itself. I have done that with This Is True. I haven't actually even tried to say, find me a funny story in the news that I might want to tell, because that just seems so wide-ranging. I don't think it could do a good job at that. But I have occasionally given it a URL and said, do you think this would make a good This Is True story? Write it for me. And it will give it a try, and it has no soul. It has no sense on what makes it funny or what makes it a twist at the end. So then I've also tried pasting in just the slug and the story, not the tagline that I've written, and say, write a tagline for this story, because it knows how I write This Is True also. It's read many stories. And it will come up with stuff. Some of them are plausible, but not usually very funny or very interesting. They're pretty mechanical. And, I'm not really surprised by that. AI, as I've often said, is more A than I. It's more artificial than intelligent. It doesn't really have intelligence the way we think of it. It is a predictive model on what word would come after this word if you're talking about this topic. And that's not really a way to write with soul. And it can write some good fiction stories sometimes. I've actually seen some good fiction from AI, as long as it's short. But I think, This Is True story is supposed to be around 100 words, maybe longer if it's a complex story. But I don't think it has the capability of picking the right facts to tell the story. It gets pretty rudimentary and verbose, and leaves out, at the same time, it leaves out some of the more pertinent facts that really make it a story. And I don't think that's going to change anytime really soon. I don't think it can really get the idea of how it is I write and that my writers write. And I'll edit my writers so they sometimes get a little bit verbose, and I'll trim it down and change it up a little bit, more or less, depending on the writer. But I don't think AI can do it, and I don't think it will be able to do it anytime soon. So I'll probably retire before it can do it, and even then, I'm a little bit wary or disbelieving that it will be able to do it anytime soon. So bottom line, no. Thanks so much for watching. If you're a sustaining member of This Is True, that means a premium subscriber or other financial contributor, please do ask a question. Look in the newsletter for the URL for where to do that, or pop me a note if you're on Patreon or something like that, and we'll get that going. I'm Randy Cassingham, and I'll talk at you later.